Okay, the light's on. Does my makeup look decent? Look okay? Okay, well, let's just get started then. I'm just going to wing it today. We're going to talk about taking a deposit. Should you take a deposit? Interesting topic. And you might think it's about money and cash flow, but that's not the most important reason. That's one reason. We'll get to that later. We're going to talk about the most important reasons first, which are really kind of psychological. So it's kind of interesting stuff. The question of, taking a deposit, how much of a deposit should you take, how you actually ask for a deposit, it can be a little bit of an awkward subject at first. Somebody calls you up and contacts you about an illustration, or they email you, give you a direct message, and how do you ask for money? How much money do you ask for? You don't want to seem like you're money hungry or mercantile, or if that's the right word, or something like that. In a way, it just seems like it's not the right thing to do. It's a little bit hard to get over that hill at first. But to be frank, after a certain period of time, and you've had a career for some period of time, you're going to learn how to take a deposit, and you're going to find out that it actually is quite important to take a deposit. So let's kind of dive right into this. And again, like I said, we'll talk about the money aspect at the end. So the most important thing about taking a deposit when you start a new project with a new client is the fact that it makes a very powerful statement to your client and also to yourself. Let's talk about the client first. It makes a powerful statement to your client. When you take a deposit, you're signaling to your client that you're a professional, that you have confidence in your work. And sometimes that takes a little time to develop. Let's face it, maybe we've had, 3 or 4 jobs. We're still very new to this. But still, it's very important to send that signal to your client that you need to take a deposit, that that's your policy. Now, how much of a deposit do you take? In almost all cases, it should be 50%. That's nice and clean and easy. That's what I ask for in virtually all new jobs with new clients, and sometimes with clients that I've already been working with for years in some cases. And to be honest with you, hardly anybody ever balks at that. Every once in a while, you'll hear something where somebody will say, well, we'd like to do 35% up front and then 35% at 2/3 completion and then the final at completion. Okay, no problem, we can do that. But it really doesn't come up very often. So that's a very powerful message. There is also another powerful message to your client that's in there. Now, this does have a little bit to do with money, but you're telling your client, not only are you worth the deposit and that the client should be confident in you, that you can do the job and do it well, but you're also getting the client in the frame of mind that you're going to be paid. Let's face it, and I've had this experience more than once. If you don't take a deposit with somebody that's a new client, they're not quite in the frame of mind work early on to pay you. It's like, oh, this person is working for free. Now, they might not be actually, your client might not be actually saying that to themselves literally, but there's a little bit of a message. You're going to start the job, you're going to work hours and hours and hours, you didn't take a deposit. You're giving the client not such a good impression that you're working, at least at the start, for free. And you're going to bill it later, and that's when everything is going to come due. That is not a good message to give to a client, and some clients will take advantage of that. You're telling them, well, I'm not really in it for the money. I just want to do good work for my portfolio, so to speak. You really don't want to do that. Obviously, you're in the business of you have expenses, you have to pay your rent and groceries, etc. Anyway, that can kind of blow up on you, I have found. I've also found over many years that if you do not take a deposit, those jobs tend to develop problems. Now, I hardly ever have a problem with a job when I take a deposit, but when I don't take a deposit, it seems like the client is less confident in me. They're more critical. Can you move this over here a little bit? I don't like this shade of red, it's too dull. These little things kind of come back, and over many jobs, many projects, I have begun to make the correlation that if I don't take a deposit, the client is going to be maybe a little bit more critical about things that maybe they shouldn't be. I think this is a real strange but true psychological effect. The other thing that's important about taking a deposit is that it makes a powerful statement to you. as the artist. You're telling yourself, I'm worth it. I'm good enough. I have enough confidence in my product, my style, my execution, my getting a project done on time and that the client will like, that I can take a deposit. So that's a powerful message to make to yourself. It just is a real confidence builder, a sort of a self-confidence builder. It feels good. Now, I'll give you a quick example. I remember a number of years ago, I got an email one afternoon from somebody I never heard of out in California, all the way across the other side of the country. They needed some kind of illustration of some sort of technical subject, and they needed it quick. They needed it in a week. So they asked, how do you work? How can we achieve this deadline? I said, I'm going to send you an email. It's going to tell you what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, and I take 50% of the estimate upfront at project start. I like that term, project start. That really, those two words, project start, seems to really work good. You're telling your client so many words that in order to start the project, you need the deposit. You're not saying it like, I'm not going to start until I get the deposit. You're saying it very nicely. You're saying, I take 50% at project start. It kind of puts it very much on them. That could be a real effective way of asking for it. And I'll talk about, the email in just a moment. If you're interested in becoming a freelance illustrator, or you already are, you like these videos, please tap on the subscribe. Also give me a thumbs up. That tells YouTube to send this video to other potential illustrators, which is a good thing. So you're making this powerful statement to yourself. You're making this powerful statement to your client. So the next question is, how do you ask for this deposit? Well, there's basically two ways. It could come up on the phone. You could be having a phone conversation and you could mention it then. But really, what I usually do is mention it in an email. And I have another video up shortly which talks about doing email letters of agreement. And that will be up here, or possibly here. It'll be somewhere up there. I will have a link up on that soon. Just very, very briefly, I like to write out an email, send it to the client. Basically has a number of different items. Client name, the date, project name, just a very, very brief description of what I'm going to do for the project. The other thing I'll have is deliverables, what the client is going to get. Maybe they're going to get a JPEG that's 12 inches across at 300 dpi, whatever. And the price and the deadline. On the price, I'll actually put the total estimated cost. Underneath that, I'll put 50% deposit. Now, some clients will ask you to actually send them an invoice. But many clients, you could just do that estimate and they will kick it out. And if they know that that is important to start their project and they have a tight time frame, you'll get it pretty quickly. Some clients will balk a little bit with this paying a deposit. And I typically find this in two kinds of people. If someone balks and it's a tiny ad agency or graphic design studio with one person, that's a bad sign. You might consider not working with this client. If they can't come up with the money for the 50% deposit, I'm kind of wondering how they're going to come up with the final payment. So that is a red flag. Actually, that is a whole row of red flags. But there is another type of client that can potentially be a very, very good client to have that will also hesitate a little bit in paying you a deposit. And that is a big company, a big corporation. They have a whole system where you have to get into it with paperwork and social security number and all this sort of thing. They may not be able to pop out a deposit in 24 hours or even 72 hours. It may take them a little longer. So with folks like that, and these can be great clients because they have, quite frankly, lots of projects, and most times they have pretty deep pockets, which we like. It means we can travel more and work less. But in those particular cases, I allow those clients a little bit of leeway. I look at the company. Is this a company that I want to work for? Is this a company that may have a lot of projects? Did they give me or agree to a pretty good budget? So I will give them a little bit of leeway. But if the project, if you really get rolling in on the project and you're investing a lot of time and nothing has come through, no deposit is forthcoming, I like to reach out to my contact and say, hey, I haven't gotten a deposit yet. I have started on the project, but I really need to get this in. And I say it very, very nicely in an email, and that frequently will get things rolling. Even big companies can usually come up with a small payment if people know that it's a high priority. Now, let's talk about the last thing. And the last thing is cash flow. I really do think that this is the least important reason for taking a deposit, but it's still an important reason. Let's face it, we do have real financial needs. Now, let's just look at an example. Let's say you get involved, your client is a greeting card company, it might be a book publisher, children's book publisher, maybe it's a large advertising agency. they are going to have a system in place for paying you. And when you ask for the deposit, that gets the wheels turning on this. So that is a good thing. Get into their system. Get their accounting department to know who you are, because they've maybe seen an invoice or they've seen that email estimate from your contact at the company, and they're going to ask you for some paperwork. Usually, I think it's a W-9 if my memory serves me correctly, that you're going to fill out and email back. It's good to get rolling in the system. Much better to get rolling with a deposit than finish the job and have to wait 2 weeks for the company to recognize who you are. Sometimes they forget who you are, they lose interest. Yep, true. At any rate, good to get started then. But let's also just talk about the cash flow situation. If you get a project in that's let's say it's got a pretty good deadline, let's say it's a month project, and let's say that the company you're working for, publisher for example, let's say that they pay 60 days. That's their policy. You might work on that project for a month and then not get paid for another 2 months. That's 3 months. That's a quarter of a year before you get money if you don't take a deposit. That's pretty tough for most of us as freelance illustrators, especially when we're starting off and we don't have many clients. Most of us can't really sustain that. We need the cash flow to pay for our monthly expenses. And that is yet another reason why taking a deposit can be good. So I've summed up 3 key reasons to take a deposit. Get over that nervousness, get over that awkwardness, push forward a little bit and ask for that deposit. Number 1, makes a powerful statement to your client that you are a confident freelance illustrator. Number 2, makes a powerful statement to yourself that you have arrived, you do good work, and you deserve a deposit. That's your policy. And number 3, it's good for your personal cash flow. Helps you to pay expenses. So I hope you found this video useful, and I hope to see you on the next one.